Hello, hello. We're going to make a fantastic soba noodle salad today. I'm Karen Kennedy. This is Real Food Matters, and I'm going to show you the recipe we're going to make. It is one of my favorites that I learned when I was in grad school taking Whole Foods production classes with Cynthia Lair, author of Feeding the Whole Family. And this is the recipe. I just wanted you to see that picture. Oh my gosh. Gorgeous soba noodle, sesame, broccoli, cilantro, whatever you want. And it's called, since I know that's backwards, Asian noodle salad with broccoli and toasted sesame dressing. I love this. And this is an updated version, so my older version of this cookbook, let me show you, is, this is the older version, and I updated it because the new one has pictures and more recipes. But let me see if I can find that recipe in here. There it is. There it is. So it has, I have all these modifications written in that I liked. For example, I changed some of the vinegar and I added nut butters to it. So it's just one of those recipes that's really flexible depending on what you have. And so I know in this picture it's all green with broccoli and cilantro, but you know, it's basically these soba noodles with a really nice sesame and sweet dressing. And you can put vegetables in it. I've got broccoli, I've got purple cabbage and radishes, and then you can serve it with a protein. And I'm actually doing two different proteins today. I've got some salmon in the oven baking, but I'm also doing some tofu. So I'm going to show you how I cook that tofu first. I've already done some of it. And this part isn't in the recipe. This is something I'm doing. What I've done is, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be these crispy fried tofu. And I've taken firm tofu and I marinated it for, you know me, at lunchtime I sort of get my dinner prepped. I cut up some tofu and I marinated it in some of the dressing ingredients for this recipe. So I added some tamari, which is gluten-free soy sauce, and some balsamic vinegar, and some toasted sesame oil, which is super flavorful, very different than just plain sesame oil, some maple syrup, and I put a little bit of chili flakes, or you could do chili oil in there, and I added a little bit of ginger. That's different because there isn't ginger in the rest of this recipe. So I marinated that, and then in preparation for frying my tofu so it would have some heft and crispiness, what I did is I coated that tofu. I know this doesn't look very good now, but it will. I coated it in a combination of arrowroot and sesame seeds. Not toasted sesame seeds, just arrowroot and sesame seeds. Arrowroot's just a substitute for cornstarch. I like arrowroot a little bit better, but you can totally use cornstarch. And so what I did is I just heated up some coconut oil in my cast iron skillet, and I'm still rolling my tofu around, make sure it's got that arrowroot and sesame, and it makes this nice sort of crunchy sesame crust on the outside of the tofu. And I do this in small batches, and I think you'll see why. It's because you don't have to cook this very long, and you want to cook it at a pretty high heat. So as soon as I'm adding my tofu, you can hear it and see it, it starts sizzling. Don't add your tofu to this until you've got a really nice sizzling pan, because that's where you get the crust, that crispy sesame crust. I think I got this idea for coating it in the arrowroot powder and sesame from my friend Kate. Katie did, I think you did this at my house. I'll save this for later. But watch, this is not going to be cooking for very long. I'll wipe my hands off. And then I'm going to turn it over. I mean, this tofu has, you know, 4 sides to it. Come here. So I'm just going to one at a time, hopefully starting with the one that I added first. Start turning this tofu over. And I want to toast this, you know, on at least 2 sides, preferably 3 sides. Oh, it doesn't have 4 sides, it has 6 sides. So while I'm doing, well, let me start with, before course, you know I marinated my tofu. And then I put a big pot of water on to boil because I'm going to cook my soba noodles and my broccoli in there. And I'm going to do them together. And while that's heating up, now I'm doing my tofu. So I'm starting this, you know, I started this process at about 5:30, and I'll be able to eat by 6:30. Still turning things. I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit. It's a bit of a splattering mess. Do you guys use splatter screens? I know I don't think it's popular to fry things anymore, but I fry things. But I really recommend, you know, you use these splatter screens when you're frying because one thing, they help protect your clothing. I mean, I have an apron on, but the grease stains on your clothes don't come out. And it protects your face because grease is so dangerous, it's so hot. And it just makes less of a mess. All right. Okay, I'm boiling. So I had some salmon steaks in there from what my son caught a couple weeks ago. And I just baked that at about 350. I salt and peppered it and poured a glass of white wine over it. Baked it at 350. And I'm almost positive that is cooked, but it's going to keep steaming. All right. And now I'm going to check these. There. So that's it. That's my tofu, and I'm setting these into a bowl or tray that's lined with a paper towel to absorb that excess oil. And you can you see how that sesame is just crisped up with the arrowroot powder? So the reason I use arrowroot, you know, like I said, you can totally use cornstarch. I minimize my use of corn products sometimes because of the whole, you know, Roundup Ready crops, and I think corn products that aren't organic, you know, have a tendency to have a lot of pesticide residue. And some people I know are sensitive to corn products. So I just wanted you to know that you could get arrowroot powder, and you can get it in some bulk sections. I tend to buy like 1 pound bags of it from Azure Standard and have on hand. I can also use that to thicken sauces and thicken like gravies and stuff instead of cornstarch or instead of wheat flour. Okay, so now my pot of water is ready. And I don't know, do you guys use soba noodles? Do you even know what they are? I'm looking for my scissors. So soba noodles are a traditional Japanese noodle, and most of the time they're made with a combination of buckwheat flour and wheat flour. Now, buckwheat flour is, no, don't go thinking these are gluten-free because they do have wheat flour in them. You can buy 100% buckwheat soba noodles, but they behave very differently, and you've got to be careful with them. I find they get mushy faster, so use them, but use them with some extra care because they don't give you the same texture always. When you do these noodles, you don't need to add salt to your water, and I'm going to cook the whole package, but they are individually wrapped, these little bundles, they're so cute. And they don't take very long to cook. Oh dear. That was very inelegant. There. I dropped some of the wrapper in there. All right, how long do these take to cook? 4 minutes. All right, so that's boiling. But now I can start tidying up and assembling my salad. So what I want to do is tell you what's in the salad dressing because it's so good. I'll read you the recipe. Okay, so for this, it takes 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, and I use tamari, 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, 2 tablespoons of toasted sesame oil, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup, 1 tablespoon of hot pepper oil, and I never have hot pepper oil, so I just add another tablespoon of a neutral oil or olive oil, and then sometimes I'll put in some chili flakes or just a pinch of cayenne pepper, but I have kids who don't appreciate the chili taste anyways. Oh, and what I did today is I actually, I added some sweet chili sauce that I had. I thought that would be a nice substitution. So that's the dressing, and that's the other thing I did, because when I was doing my marinade for the tofu, I had all those ingredients out. So I just put together this little jar of dressing that I can pour over it. So I'm all set for that. And the other thing I did in advance was I toasted about a 1/4 cup of sesame seeds. All right? So 1/4 cup of sesame seeds, and my dressing, and my tofu. And so now all that's left to do is to drain this off. And one thing I forgot I was going to do is I'm also going to cook my broccoli. I wish I would have put my broccoli in at the same time as my noodles. But usually, like if I'm making a pasta and I'm going to put some broccoli in it, like when I make my macaroni and cheese, I put broccoli in it. But I cut it up really small so it ends up just looking like flecks, and I just say it's pesto. When I do that, I cook my pasta for 5 or 7 minutes, and then the last 5 minutes, I add my broccoli. But this will just be pretty al dente broccoli, and that's cool. All right, so I'm going to pause this video. I'm going to drain that pasta and come back, and I'm going to show you how I assemble this and what it looks like when it's done.